rechazada la chica apache estéril, quiero el ranchero dijo, solo te quiero a ti. The village sat near a river, where families drew water, washed clothes, and let their children play under the shade of the old cottonwood trees. The air smelled of dust, wildflowers, and wood smoke from the fires that burned in almost every home. Everyone in the village knew each other's names, histories, and sometimes even their secrets. In such a place, it was impossible to hide anything. From a young age, Maria had learned to carry herself with quiet dignity. She had her mother's dark, straight hair and her father's sharp, steady eyes. Her skin was bronzed from long hours spent in the sun, tending to the small garden behind her family's home. She had a gentle voice that seemed to calm people when she spoke, and an innate kindness that drew children and elders toward her. The villagers often remarked that she had a soft heart and a strong spirit, a rare combination that made her both respected and admired. Yet, despite her many gifts, Maria carried a sadness that seemed invisible to most. From the time she had reached adulthood, the villagers began asking her about marriage and children. It was not just a question, it was an expectation. In a society where family was the foundation of life, a woman's worth was often measured by her ability to bear children. Maria had long known that she could not have children, a fact that weighed heavily on her heart. She had been tested by the village healer, and every result confirmed her fear. Though her parents had reassured her that her life was valuable no matter what, the whispers in the streets and the pitying looks from other women were impossible to ignore. When young men came to her home, their families hoping for a good match, the conversations were short and awkward. At first, they spoke politely, asking about her interests, her work in the garden, and her life with her family. Maria answered with honesty and warmth, but as soon as the topic of children came up, the men would shift uncomfortably, bow politely, and leave. Some families were more blunt, declaring that a woman who could not have children was not fit for marriage. Each rejection chipped away at Maria's confidence, leaving a dull ache in her chest. She tried not to let it show, but inside, the sorrow was heavy. Her days were filled with quiet routines, the kind that allowed her to feel useful despite the loneliness. She woke early each morning to fetch water from the river, her bare feet leaving soft impressions in the sand. She tended to her small garden, carefully watering each plant, weeding around the tomato and chili plants, and pruning the small fruit trees. She loved the way the soil smelled after rain, and the way the sun made the leaves glisten in the morning light. These small tasks gave her a sense of purpose and connected her to the rhythms of life around her, even if she felt disconnected from the people who should have loved her. Maria also spent time caring for her family. Her father was a quiet man who worked on odd jobs in the village and often came home tired, but proud of his children. Her mother was tender and wise, offering advice in gentle tones, though she too felt the sting of the village's judgment toward her daughter. Maria's younger brother admired her greatly, following her around as she worked and listening to her stories of the old days, of the Apache traditions that shaped their ancestors. Though she had no children of her own, she poured all her love into her family and the small acts of kindness she offered to others. But outside of her home, the village could be unforgiving. Women would whisper as she passed, sometimes soft enough for her to hear, sometimes loud and pointed. "She is lovely," they would say, "but who would want a life without children?" Men would nod in agreement or avoid eye contact, unsure how to speak to a woman who did not fit the mold they had been taught to value. The elders, who held the history and traditions of the Apache people, sometimes spoke with sorrowful eyes, as if her inability to bear children were a tragedy that affected not just her, but the entire community. Maria had learned to keep her head high, walking past these judgments with grace, but each comment left a quiet scar. In moments of solitude, Maria would sit by the river, letting the cool water run over her fingers as she stared at the reflection of the sky. She would think about the life she imagined for herself, one filled with love, friendship, and perhaps one day, acceptance. She dreamed of a world where her worth was not tied to her ability to give birth, where she could be loved simply for being herself. In those moments, she allowed herself a small spark of hope, even as the weight of reality pressed down on her shoulders. Despite the sadness that often lingered, Maria found joy in small moments. She would laugh when the children of the village chased each other through the dusty streets, their shouts echoing against the walls of adobe houses. She would delight in the simple pleasures of baking bread over the fire, feeling the warmth seep into her hands as she kneaded the dough. She would watch the sunset, the sky turning brilliant shades of orange, pink, and purple, and marvel at the beauty that existed even in a world that sometimes seemed harsh. Her strength and quiet dignity did not go unnoticed. A few villagers admired her courage, her ability to continue living fully despite the constant whispers and rejection. But even their admiration could not erase the loneliness that settled deep in her heart. At night, in the quiet of her room, she would sometimes cry softly, not out of despair, but out of longing, for love, for acceptance, and for the chance to be truly seen for who she was. Maria's story, even in these early days, was one of resilience. She lived in a world that measured her worth by criteria she could not meet, yet she refused to let that define her. She nurtured life in ways she could control, through her family, her garden, and the kindness she offered to others. And though the path ahead seemed uncertain, she carried a quiet hope that one day, someone would see her as she truly was, strong, gentle, and worthy of love, regardless of what society expected. The village continued its rhythm, children running through the dusty streets, women preparing meals, and men tending to their work. Maria moved among them, a presence of quiet grace, holding her sadness close but not letting it rule her. She walked the fine line between hope and despair, learning every day that strength is not the absence of hardship, but the courage to face it with dignity. And though no one in the village yet understood the depth of her heart, Maria held on to the belief that life still had surprises in store, ones that could not be imagined, only experienced. And so, Maria's days passed, filled with work, quiet reflection, and small joys. She carried the weight of rejection like a shadow, but she refused to let it extinguish her spirit. In the eyes of those who could see beyond society's expectations, she was remarkable, a young woman whose courage, kindness, and gentle heart made her a light in a world that could often be harsh. Though the story of her true love had not yet begun, the seeds of her resilience and hope were already planted. Maria lived fully, even in the face of loneliness, and in doing so, prepared herself for a life that would one day be transformed by someone who could see her for exactly who she was. The day Maria first met Alejandro began like any other. The sun was climbing slowly in the sky, casting long, golden rays across the dusty village roads. Maria had finished her morning chores in the garden and was walking toward the small market in the neighboring town to sell vegetables and handmade crafts. Her basket was heavy with fresh tomatoes, chilies, and herbs she had carefully grown. She enjoyed these trips, for they allowed her to see people outside the village, hear new stories, and sometimes catch a glimpse of life beyond the predictable rhythm of her home. The market was lively, filled with the chatter of vendors and the laughter of children running between stalls. The smell of baked bread mingled with the aroma of fresh herbs, and colorful fabrics fluttered in the gentle breeze. Maria set up her modest stall in a corner, arranging her vegetables neatly and displaying her small woven baskets. She smiled politely at passers-by, though most only gave a cursory glance, busy with their own errands. Alejandro arrived a little later, riding slowly on his sturdy horse. He was a rancher, known in nearby villages for his hard work and fair dealings. Though middle-aged, he had a strong, commanding presence softened by a kind expression and gentle eyes. Unlike most men in the region, Alejandro did not seem interested in status, wealth, or appearances. He moved with confidence, yet there was a quiet humility in his demeanor that drew attention without effort. Maria first noticed him as he paused at a nearby stall, speaking kindly with the vendor about the quality of the produce. She watched from a distance, curious, but also hesitant. In her experience, most men from outside the village regarded women with superficial interest, rarely seeing them for who they truly were. Alejandro, however, did not look at her with casual glances or fleeting curiosity. There was something about the calm way he observed the world that suggested depth and understanding. When he finally approached her stall, he greeted her warmly. "Good morning," he said, tipping his hat politely. "These vegetables look very fresh. Did you grow them yourself?" Maria felt a small flutter of surprise. Most men would not have taken the time to notice her efforts. "Yes, sir," she replied softly, her voice steady despite the sudden awareness of him. "I take care of a small garden behind my home." Alejandro smiled, a genuine, friendly smile that made Maria feel at ease. "It is clear you take great care," he said. "The tomatoes look ripe and healthy and the herbs are fragrant. You have a talent for this work." Maria blinked, unaccustomed to receiving such praise. She had grown used to polite nods and occasional compliments, but they rarely carried sincerity. There was no judgment in his words, no hint of the societal expectations that usually weighed on her. For the first time in a long while she felt seen, not for her ability to conform, but for her effort, skill, and dedication. Alejandro spent the next few minutes asking about her garden, her methods for growing vegetables, and even how she learned to weave baskets. Maria answered with honesty, finding herself enjoying the conversation. She spoke of the mornings spent planting seeds, the joy of watching them grow, and the quiet satisfaction of a harvest well tended. She showed him her baskets, explaining how she wove each one carefully, making sure they were both beautiful and practical. Alejandro listened attentively, nodding and asking thoughtful questions. As they talked, Maria began to notice more about Alejandro. He had a deep curiosity about the world, a desire to understand the people around him rather than judge them. He did not rush the conversation or glance away impatiently. Instead, he seemed genuinely interested in her stories and experiences. His presence was steady, calm, and reassuring, like the slow, dependable rhythm of the river near her village. For the first time in many years, Maria felt a spark of connection. She realized that Alejandro did not see her limitations, her inability to have children, or the judgments of society. He saw her, her mind, her spirit, her skills, and her heart. It was a feeling she had almost forgotten, a quiet hope that perhaps someone could value her for who she truly was. Over the next few weeks, Alejandro began visiting the market regularly, often making a point to stop by Maria's stall. Each encounter was an opportunity for conversation, laughter, and learning. He shared stories of ranch life, of early mornings in the fields, and the challenges of raising livestock. Maria shared tales of her childhood in the village, the traditions of her Apache ancestors, and the lessons she had learned from her parents. They found joy in simple conversations, discovering shared values, and a mutual respect that grew stronger with each meeting. Maria began to look forward to these encounters. The nervous excitement she felt when she saw him approaching was new and refreshing. She found herself thinking of ways to improve her produce or her baskets, imagining how pleased he might be. She felt pride in her work and confidence in her abilities, emotions that had been dulled by years of rejection and societal judgment. Alejandro's interest and attention were not based on her conformity to tradition, but on the qualities she had cultivated within herself: strength, kindness, and integrity. Their friendship also included practical lessons. Alejandro invited Maria to his ranch, teaching her how to handle animals, ride horses, and care for the land. At first, she was hesitant, unfamiliar with the vast open fields and the responsibilities of ranch life. But Alejandro was patient, guiding her hand, encouraging her to trust herself, and showing her that mistakes were part of learning. Maria discovered new skills, learned to navigate a world far larger than her village, and felt a sense of empowerment she had never experienced before. During these visits, Alejandro listened to her stories of Apache traditions, the ceremonies, and the values passed down through generations. He asked thoughtful questions, showing a genuine desire to understand her culture. Maria appreciated his curiosity and the respect he showed. Many people had dismissed her heritage as old-fashioned or irrelevant, but Alejandro treated it with honor. This acknowledgement made her feel proud of her roots and connected her more deeply to her own identity. Slowly, Maria began to notice a shift in her own emotions. She felt lighter, more hopeful, and more confident. The weight of rejection that had pressed down on her for so long seemed to lift, replaced by a sense of possibility. Alejandro's presence reminded her that love and respect could exist outside the constraints of society's expectations. He had become a source of comfort and joy, someone who made her feel valued and understood. Even the villagers began to notice. Some whispered, wondering about the friendship between Maria and the rancher. Some were curious, others skeptical, but Alejandro's steady behavior and respectful demeanor gradually earned them quiet admiration. Maria, however, focused only on the bond she shared with him, appreciating the rare gift of being seen and heard without judgment. Through these weeks, Maria realized that this connection was different from any she had known. It was not hurried, forced, or superficial. It was built on shared experiences, mutual respect, and genuine interest in one another. Alejandro's kindness was unwavering, and his presence offered her something she had longed for, a safe space where she could be herself, without fear or expectation. Maria also began to reflect on her own worth. She realized that her inability to have children did not define her, and that love could exist in many forms. Her heart, which had once felt heavy with sorrow, now carried a quiet hope. She began to imagine a future where she could be happy, where someone might truly appreciate her for all that she was, and where she could live a life filled with purpose and joy. By the time the sun set each day, painting the sky with shades of orange and purple, Maria often found herself lingering near Alejandro's ranch, watching the animals settle for the night, and feeling a sense of belonging she had never known. She knew that their friendship was special, that it offered a new chapter in her life, and that perhaps in time it could grow into something even deeper. Alejandro, for his part, continued to treat Maria with patience and respect. He never pressured her or made her feel inadequate. Instead, he celebrated her skills, admired her strength, and valued her presence. His attention was consistent, grounded in authenticity and care, and Maria felt a sense of security she had longed for all her life. In these moments, Maria began to understand that love was not simply about meeting societal expectations or fulfilling traditional roles. Love was about seeing, understanding, and valuing someone for who they truly were. Alejandro's actions and words demonstrated this truth, and slowly, Maria's heart opened to the possibility of a future that she had never dared to imagine. Through work, laughter, shared stories, and quiet understanding, Maria and Alejandro formed a bond that went beyond friendship. It was a connection built on respect, admiration, and a growing affection that neither could deny. And though the road ahead would bring challenges and judgment from others, the foundation of trust and care they were building promised a relationship grounded in something far more enduring than mere expectation, something real, honest, and deeply human. As the weeks passed, Maria and Alejandro's friendship began to grow into something deeper, though neither spoke of it openly. Their bond was built slowly, nurtured by shared experiences, mutual respect, and the quiet understanding that had become a comfort to both of them. Each meeting brought new lessons, laughter, and discoveries, and Maria began to feel emotions she had never allowed herself to experience fully before. The mornings often began early. Maria would prepare her basket of vegetables, herbs, and small crafts, walking through the village streets as the sun rose and the air shimmered with warmth. She no longer approached these trips with mere routine. Instead, she carried a sense of anticipation. Perhaps today Alejandro would be at the market, or perhaps he would invite her to see something new at his ranch. Even the thought of these possibilities lifted her spirits, bringing a quiet glow to her heart. Alejandro, in turn, made an effort to include her in his world. He invited Maria to visit his ranch more frequently, teaching her skills she had never imagined she would need. She learned to ride horses confidently, feeling the rhythm of the animal beneath her and the wind rushing past as they galloped across open fields. She helped care for the cattle, learning which animals required special attention and how to move them safely. She learned to mend fences, feed animals, and even understand the subtle cues that indicated an animal's health or mood. At first, these tasks were difficult. Maria stumbled, lost her balance, and sometimes felt frustrated at her own mistakes. But Alejandro never chastised her. Instead, he guided her patiently, explaining, demonstrating, and encouraging her to keep trying. "Every mistake is a lesson," he would say, his voice calm and steady. "We grow stronger when we learn from what we do wrong." Maria found herself absorbing not just the practical skills, but also a philosophy of patience, resilience, and perseverance. These lessons extended beyond ranch work and into her own life, giving her confidence in herself and her abilities. As she grew more comfortable in the open fields, Maria began to share parts of herself she had long kept hidden. She told Alejandro stories of her childhood, of the lessons her parents had taught her, and of the traditions of her Apache ancestors. She spoke of the ceremonies, the songs, and the stories passed down through generations. Alejandro listened with genuine interest, asking questions not out of politeness, but because he wanted to understand and honor her heritage. Maria had rarely encountered someone who showed such respect for her culture, and it deepened her trust and admiration for him. In return, Alejandro shared his own experiences, speaking of life on the ranch, the challenges of raising livestock, and the quiet satisfaction of a day well spent. He told her about the long hours of work, the unexpected difficulties that came with managing land, and the small victories that made the effort worthwhile. Maria listened intently, realizing that despite their different worlds, they shared similar values: hard work, respect for the land, and a desire to live with integrity. The bond between them began to take on a new dimension, one of mutual admiration and quiet affection. Maria noticed the little gestures Alejandro made, the way he always ensured she had water on hot days, the way he offered encouragement when she struggled, and the way he genuinely listened to her thoughts and opinions. These small acts of kindness conveyed a message far more profound than words alone. She mattered to him, not because of social expectation, but because of who she was. Maria, for her part, found herself laughing more freely than she had in years. She enjoyed teasing Alejandro about his careful attention to his work, and she found joy in sharing her knowledge of herbs, plants, and weaving. Their conversations flowed naturally, sometimes playful, sometimes serious, always grounded in mutual respect. Maria's heart, which had once been heavy with rejection and loneliness, began to feel light, filled with warmth and the quiet thrill of connection. Despite the growing closeness, they were both aware of the world around them. Whispers traveled fast in the village and even to the surrounding towns. Some people questioned the friendship, unsure of how to interpret the bond between the young Apache woman and the older rancher. Some expressed doubt, wondering if Alejandro's attention was fleeting or if Maria could withstand the scrutiny of society. But Alejandro never wavered. His focus remained on Maria, his respect and kindness unwavering, giving her the courage to continue opening her heart. There were moments of doubt, of course. Maria sometimes questioned herself, wondering if she deserved this kind of attention and affection. Years of rejection had left scars that were not easily healed. She worried about the judgment of others, about what the future might hold, and whether their growing connection could survive societal pressures. Yet each time these doubts surfaced, Alejandro's presence reminded her that love and friendship could exist in its purest form, without condition, without expectation, and without judgment. One afternoon, as they worked together in the ranch's fields, Alejandro paused to point out a cluster of wildflowers growing along the fence. "Look at these," he said softly. "Even in tough conditions, they thrive. Sometimes the world seems harsh, but life finds a way to grow." Maria smiled, realizing the deeper meaning in his words. Just like the flowers, she had endured the hardships of judgment and rejection, and now, perhaps, it was her time to flourish. Their time together was not always serious. They laughed often, shared small meals, and enjoyed the quiet moments of companionship. Maria taught Alejandro how to braid her hair in traditional Apache styles, while he showed her how to repair a fence quickly and efficiently. They discovered that their differences complemented each other, blending tradition with practical knowledge, youth with experience, and curiosity with patience. Each day together strengthened the bond between them, deepening the affection that neither dared to name aloud. Gradually, Maria noticed subtle changes in her own feelings. She felt safe, valued, and cherished in ways she had never known. Her self-doubt began to lessen as she realized that Alejandro's attention was not fleeting or superficial. It was genuine. She could be herself, with her strengths and limitations, and still be accepted fully. This realization filled her with hope, a quiet but powerful sense that love could exist on terms different from those she had been taught to expect. Alejandro, too, found himself drawn to Maria in ways he had not anticipated. Her kindness, resilience, and gentle spirit touched him deeply. He admired her strength in the face of hardship, the patience she showed in her daily tasks, and the authenticity with which she lived her life. He began to recognize that his feelings went beyond friendship, though he understood that the world might not easily accept such a connection. Still, his care for her never wavered, and he was determined to honor her heart above all else. As the days turned into weeks, the villagers began to notice the growing closeness. Some whispered in quiet corners, speculating about what the future might hold. Others watched in silence, curious but hesitant to judge. Alejandro and Maria, however, paid little attention to the opinions of others. They focused on the shared moments that mattered, the laughter, the learning, and the simple joy of being together. Their connection was private, sacred, and resilient, protected from the harsh scrutiny of the outside world. Maria began to understand that love and affection could exist even when society did not approve. She learned that true connection was built on mutual respect, understanding, and shared experiences. Alejandro's steady presence taught her that happiness did not always come from fulfilling expectations, but from embracing the people and moments that truly mattered. She realized that her heart had space for affection, trust, and joy, and that these feelings could grow in ways she had never imagined. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon each evening, painting the sky with streaks of orange, pink, and purple, Maria often lingered on the ranch, reluctant to leave the world they had created together. She watched the animals settle, felt the gentle wind on her face, and thought about the bond that had become the most important part of her life. In Alejandro's presence, she felt understood, appreciated, and seen, not for what society demanded of her, but for who she truly was. In those quiet, shared moments, Maria recognized the truth of what was happening in her heart. She was no longer merely surviving, no longer merely fulfilling obligations or enduring rejection. She was living, fully and richly with someone who valued her essence, celebrated her strengths, and accepted her without condition. The friendship that had begun as curiosity and kindness had blossomed into something profound, a foundation upon which a future of hope and love could be built. And so, Maria and Alejandro continued their days together, learning from each other, supporting one another, and enjoying the simple pleasures of life on the ranch. Their affection grew silently, steadily, and beautifully, like a river carving its path through the land, gentle but unstoppable, shaping their lives in ways neither could have predicted. Though the world outside might question or judge, within the shared spaces of trust, respect, and companionship, they had found something rare and enduring, a connection that could withstand anything, a love that began as friendship but promised the possibility of so much more. As Maria and Alejandro's bond grew stronger, the world around them began to notice. While their connection brought them joy and comfort, it also brought attention, scrutiny, and the inevitable judgments of society. In a small village where traditions were deeply rooted, the idea of a friendship, and possibly more, between a young Apache woman and an older rancher was unusual. People whispered behind their backs, exchanged glances, and sometimes asked questions with thinly veiled concern. Though Alejandro and Maria tried to ignore the murmurs, they could not completely escape them. The first signs of tension appeared when villagers began approaching Maria, offering advice she did not want. Some spoke kindly, warning her to be cautious of Alejandro's intentions, while others spoke sharply, questioning why she would allow herself to grow close to someone who was not part of their community. "Why waste your heart?" they would ask. "You will face only disappointment." Maria listened politely, but felt a mix of fear and frustration. She knew that people only spoke from their own expectations, not from understanding her heart. Yet their words echoed in her mind, making her question whether her growing feelings for Alejandro were wise. Alejandro, however, remained a steady presence. He noticed the unease in Maria's eyes and the tension in her posture when villagers approached. One afternoon, as they worked together mending a fence, he gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Do not let their words weigh you down," he said quietly. "They do not see what I see. They do not know the heart I have come to cherish." Maria looked at him, grateful for his reassurance, but also aware that their connection would not be free from obstacles. The couple soon faced more direct challenges. Families in the village began to openly question Alejandro's intentions, some suggesting that his interest in Maria was fleeting, or that it could never lead to marriage because she could not have children. Their whispers carried weight, and some of the younger villagers began to avoid interaction, unsure how to navigate the new dynamic. Maria felt a familiar ache in her chest, the old pain of rejection resurfacing, amplified by the realization that even Alejandro's presence might not shield her from societal judgment. Despite this, Alejandro never faltered. He continued to treat Maria with respect, kindness, and unwavering attention. He encouraged her to trust in their bond, reminding her that love was not defined by expectations, but by understanding, respect, and shared life. "Family is more than children," he told her one evening as they walked along a path near the ranch. "Family is built on love, support, and shared experiences. That is what matters most." His words comforted Maria, planting seeds of hope and courage in her heart, even as the world around them seemed critical and skeptical. There were difficult moments when Maria questioned herself. She worried about what others thought, about the possible loneliness that could accompany their relationship if society continued to disapprove. She wondered if her inability to have children would forever be seen as a flaw, preventing her from experiencing the full love and acceptance she longed for. These thoughts weighed heavily on her, yet Alejandro's presence reminded her that she was not defined by the expectations of others. In his eyes, she was complete as she was, and that realization brought her both relief and strength. As their connection deepened, Alejandro and Maria faced practical challenges as well. The ranch required constant work, and Alejandro had little time to shield her from the village's gossip. Some villagers attempted to interfere, suggesting that Alejandro's attention could be motivated by pity or curiosity rather than genuine affection. Maria felt a mix of anger and sadness at these insinuations, knowing that they were baseless, yet understanding how powerful social pressure could be. Alejandro, sensing her frustration, took her hand and said, "Do not let them control our story. Our lives are ours to live, and our hearts are ours to give." One day, Alejandro invited Maria to attend a community gathering in a nearby town. While Maria felt nervous about facing a larger crowd, she agreed, trusting Alejandro's guidance and support. At the gathering, they were met with curious eyes and whispered comments. Some villagers expressed skepticism, wondering why Alejandro, a man of experience and social standing, would choose a woman who could not fulfill the traditional role of wife and mother. Others were more open-minded, quietly observing the couple and noting the genuine affection that radiated between them. Throughout the event, Alejandro remained calm and composed. He engaged in conversations with respect and courtesy, never allowing the skepticism of others to affect how he treated Maria. He introduced her proudly to friends and neighbors, highlighting her intelligence, skills, and character. Maria noticed the change in people's demeanor. Some softened, impressed by Alejandro's sincerity, while others remained doubtful, though unable to deny the depth of their connection. The experience taught Maria that courage and patience were necessary to face societal challenges, and that consistent integrity could gradually change perceptions. Back at the ranch, Alejandro and Maria often reflected on their experiences. They spoke openly about their fears, hopes, and dreams. Alejandro encouraged Maria to express her feelings without fear, reminding her that her voice mattered. Maria, in turn, shared her anxiety about judgment and rejection, allowing Alejandro to reassure her of the value he placed on their relationship. These conversations strengthened their trust, creating a foundation that could withstand external pressures. During this period, Maria also learned to recognize the importance of her own self-worth. She began to see that societal expectations did not define her value or the potential for love in her life. With Alejandro's guidance, she embraced her strengths, talents, and unique qualities, understanding that a fulfilling life could be built on mutual respect, shared goals, and emotional connection rather than conformity to tradition. This realization empowered her, giving her confidence to face the whispers and doubts with grace and dignity. Alejandro's support extended beyond emotional reassurance. He demonstrated his commitment through consistent actions, helping her with chores, teaching her practical skills, and standing by her in public. These actions conveyed a message more powerful than words alone, that their bond was real, intentional, and enduring. Maria came to rely on these tangible gestures as evidence that their connection could survive the scrutiny and challenges of society. Despite the obstacles, Maria and Alejandro found joy in simple, shared moments. They worked together on the ranch, cooked meals, shared stories by the fire, and walked along trails lined with wildflowers. These moments, though ordinary, became extraordinary because they were spent in mutual respect, trust, and affection. Each day reinforced the lesson that love was not measured by societal approval, but by the depth of understanding, care, and shared experience between two people. As the seasons changed, Maria noticed subtle shifts in the village's attitude. While some continued to gossip or express doubt, others began to observe the couple with admiration. Alejandro's consistency, respect, and kindness demonstrated the sincerity of his intentions, gradually softening even the harshest critics. Maria realized that their perseverance and integrity had the power to influence perceptions, slowly transforming the narrative from judgment to acceptance. Yet, the couple knew that challenges were ongoing. There would always be those who questioned, doubted, or disapproved. But they faced these obstacles together, fortified by trust, patience, and a shared vision for a life built on love and respect. Maria understood that true courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to face it alongside someone who valued her heart above all else. In quiet moments, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Maria reflected on the journey she had taken. From the loneliness of early rejection to the cautious hope sparked by Alejandro's presence, she had learned resilience, patience, and the power of genuine connection. Alejandro, too, reflected on their bond, recognizing that love was an act of commitment, understanding, and unwavering support. Together, they were creating a story of courage and devotion that transcended societal expectations. Their days continued in a rhythm of work, learning, and companionship. With each challenge they faced, their bond grew stronger. With each shared laugh, story, or quiet moment, they discovered the depth of their connection. And though society's scrutiny lingered, Alejandro and Maria knew that their relationship was guided by something far greater than judgment: mutual respect, trust, and the quiet, powerful force of love. Through these experiences, Maria discovered a profound truth. Life could be harsh and judgmental, but love, when grounded in understanding, patience, and respect, could endure. She realized that happiness was not about meeting the expectations of others, but about embracing the people and moments that mattered most. Alejandro had shown her that love could exist beyond societal norms, and in doing so, had given her the courage to envision a future where she could be truly valued for who she was. And so, despite the challenges, Maria and Alejandro continued to navigate the complexities of life together. They faced whispers, doubts, and societal pressures with patience and integrity. They celebrated the ordinary joys of life, finding beauty and meaning in work, shared experiences, and quiet moments of companionship. Their relationship, built on respect, affection, and unwavering support, became a testament to the power of love that transcends expectation and judgment, proving that true connection can flourish even in the face of adversity. Over time, Alejandro and Maria's bond had become strong, tested not only by daily life on the ranch, but also by the judgments and doubts of society. Each challenge they had faced together had strengthened their connection, and the quiet trust they shared had grown into something deep and enduring. Yet, despite their closeness, neither had spoken the words that lingered in both of their hearts, the words that could transform friendship into a lifelong commitment. Maria often found herself thinking about the future. She no longer feared loneliness in the same way, for Alejandro's presence had filled her days with warmth, laughter, and purpose. Still, she wondered if society would ever accept their union, if the whispers of the villagers would ever cease, or if the reality of being childless would prevent her from fully embracing love. These thoughts weighed on her, but she also knew that with Alejandro by her side, she felt stronger than she had ever felt before. She had learned that life's greatest rewards often required courage, and that love could flourish even when it defied expectation. Alejandro, too, had been contemplating their future. He admired Maria's strength, her resilience, and the quiet kindness that touched everyone she met. He understood the challenges they faced in gaining acceptance from the village, but he also knew that what they shared was real, meaningful, and worth protecting. Each time he looked at Maria, he felt a sense of peace and certainty that he had not known before. He realized that the love he felt for her was not conditional, nor was it bound by tradition or expectation. It was simply, profoundly for her. One warm afternoon, Alejandro invited Maria to walk with him through a nearby meadow, a place filled with wild flowers, gentle streams, and tall grasses swaying in the breeze. It was one of their favorite spots, where they had spent countless hours learning from each other, sharing stories, and simply enjoying the quiet beauty of nature. As they walked side by side, the birds singing above them and the sun casting a golden glow across the land, Alejandro spoke with a seriousness that Maria could sense immediately. "Maria," he began, pausing to look into her eyes, "these past months have been some of the most meaningful of my life. I have watched you face the world with courage, patience, and grace. I have seen your heart, your strength, and your spirit. And I have realized that I do not want to spend another day without you by my side." Maria's heart beat faster, a mixture of anticipation, hope, and emotion swelling inside her. She had longed for words like these but had never dared to hope they would be spoken so clearly, so sincerely. Alejandro continued, his voice steady and filled with conviction. "I do not care about what others say or expect," he said firmly. "I do not care about traditions that measure worth in ways that are unfair. All I care about is you. You are the one I want to share my life with, through every sunrise and sunset, through every joy and challenge. Maria, I love you, and I want you to be mine, not because of anything else but simply because of who you are." Tears filled Maria's eyes, not of sadness, but of overwhelming relief and happiness. She had waited so long to feel seen, to feel valued, and now, in Alejandro's words, she realized that she had finally found someone who cherished her completely. Her voice trembled as she spoke, but it was filled with certainty. "Alejandro, I feel the same. I have felt it for some time, but I was afraid. Afraid that the world would not understand, afraid that I was not enough. But you have shown me that love does not depend on what society demands, and that it can grow even in the face of doubt. I love you too." In that moment, the world around them seemed to fade. The tall grasses, the singing birds, the soft rustle of the wind, all became part of a quiet celebration of their love. Alejandro reached for her hand, holding it gently but firmly, as if anchoring them both to this truth that had taken months to acknowledge fully. They stood together, heart to heart, knowing that their lives were about to change in the most beautiful and profound way. Following that declaration, Alejandro took further steps to solidify their bond. He spoke openly to the villagers and to the families in the surrounding communities, making it clear that his intentions were sincere and enduring. Some met his words with skepticism, while others were moved by the honesty and courage of his declaration. Slowly, perception began to shift. People began to see Maria not through the lens of her inability to have children, but through the eyes of Alejandro's unwavering commitment, recognizing her strength, kindness, and remarkable character. Maria, too, embraced this change with courage and grace. She had learned that acceptance begins with self-worth, and that when one lives authentically and with integrity, the judgments of others lose much of their power. She moved through the village with confidence, sharing moments of joy and kindness, her laughter ringing out freely, unburdened by fear or doubt. The combination of her own self-respect and Alejandro's support gradually inspired respect and admiration from those who had once whispered critically behind her back. As days turned into weeks, Alejandro and Maria began to build a life together on his ranch. They combined their knowledge and skills, blending the traditions of Maria's Apache heritage with the practicalities of ranch life. They tended the land, cared for the animals, and created a home filled with warmth, laughter, and shared purpose. Though they did not have children, their home was alive with love, stories, and the small joys of everyday life. Meals prepared together, evenings spent watching sunsets, and quiet moments beside the fire sharing dreams and reflections. Maria's sense of belonging grew stronger each day. She realized that family could be defined in many ways, and that a home filled with mutual respect, care, and affection could be just as fulfilling as one shaped by traditional expectations. Alejandro became her partner in every sense, someone who supported her, respected her, and valued her presence in his life. Their bond, forged through challenges and strengthened by shared experiences, became a testament to the power of love that transcends societal norms. Over time, even the villagers who had once doubted them began to accept their union. Some approached Maria to express admiration for her strength, others offered congratulations, and many acknowledged the genuine love that had blossomed between the two. Alejandro's unwavering support and Maria's grace had slowly, quietly, transformed perceptions. The whispers of judgment faded, replaced by acknowledgement of a partnership built on respect, courage, and mutual affection. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, Alejandro and Maria sat together on a wooden bench outside the ranch house. They watched the cattle settle for the night, the wind rustling through the grasses and the stars beginning to twinkle overhead. Alejandro took Maria's hand in his once more, smiling warmly. "Do you see," he said softly, "how far we have come? From the whispers and doubts to this moment of peace, understanding, and love." Maria nodded, tears of happiness glistening in her eyes. "Yes," she replied. "It has not been easy, but every step has been worth it. We have built something real, something enduring, and something that no one can take away from us." In that quiet evening, they felt the fullness of their journey, the struggles, the challenges, the growth, and the triumph of love over judgment. They understood that their story was unique, forged in patience, resilience, and unwavering commitment. It was a story of courage, proving that love is not bound by societal expectation, and that true connection can flourish even when the world seems against it. Together, Alejandro and Maria looked toward the future with hope. They imagined more days filled with laughter, work, and shared experiences. They dreamed of continuing to build a life together that honored their values, their traditions, and their love. And though life would continue to bring challenges, they knew that their bond, forged in trust and respect, could withstand anything. And so, in the warmth of the evening, surrounded by the land they cared for and the quiet peace they had earned, Alejandro took Maria's face gently in his hands and whispered, "Solo ti quiero a ti." Only you, he meant, the words simple yet profound, carrying a lifetime of promise, devotion, and truth. Maria smiled, her heart full, knowing that she had finally found a love that saw her completely, cherished her entirely, and embraced her as she truly was. From that moment forward, Maria and Alejandro's lives were intertwined, filled with shared purpose, mutual respect, and enduring love. They faced the world together, stronger for the challenges they had overcome, and richer for the joy and connection they had nurtured. Their story became a quiet inspiration, showing that love is defined not by societal expectation, but by the courage to value, honor, and cherish one another fully. And so, Maria's journey, from rejection and loneliness to acceptance, courage, and profound love, reached its most beautiful chapter. It was a story of resilience, patience, and the extraordinary power of being seen and loved for exactly who one is. Through life's trials and the judgment of society, Maria and Alejandro had discovered a truth that endured. That love, when true and unwavering, can flourish even in the face of adversity, and that the heart's deepest desire is always to be recognized, respected, and cherished.